Hey everybody, so I want to show you quickly how to add Google typefaces, Google fonts to your website. So we've used Google fonts before, but of course they were accessible on the class server and not on the internet. So I want to show you where to find these. If you go to google.com/fonts with the pound sign, show up at the Google font repository, and it's pretty awesome. They have 707 typefaces for free use, which is really great. Some of them are really amazing. I've already pre-selected some that show up on a list on the first blog post. But if you want to use other typefaces, particularly for display or headlines, that sort of thing, definitely go for it. Search through, take a peek at them. Just remember that you still need to add them to the type mule for them to be approved. So one of the ones I know that are it's pre-approved is the Allegria. Hope if I spelled it right. So there we go. There's Allegria. We've got Allegria, Allegria Sans, etc., etc. So it will show you everything that is available under that name, which is cool. If you remember, Allegria is really fully featured. It's got a lot of different weights. It's got a lot of different features like italic, small caps, old style numerals, etc. So we're gonna roll with this one for now. So I'm gonna select the one I want to use, and then you'll notice down here there's choose, review, and use. I'm gonna click on review just to show you guys the difference between the different viewing modes. So in review, this is kind of like a mini type mule itself. It'll show you how it behaves as a paragraph or as a headline in various weights, how that might look. And so then up here, of course, you can change things to the various character sets that it may have included. This one happens to have Vietnamese, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, so anyway, this is what it's going to look like. I'm happy with it. We're good. I'm going to click on use, and it gives me the option to choose the styles I want. One important thing to note is that the more of these you select, the longer your page is going to take to load, because it's going to have to grab all these files off the server space that Google is hosting these on and load them on your computer. So if I start selecting all of these, you can see over on the right the little dials kind of getting angry at me. It's going to go up and up and up. And in reality, I don't really need these, so I should only be selecting the ones I do want and need. In this case, I'm just going to go with normal 400. Of course, I'd probably, if we were doing this for real, I'd probably want italic, I'd probably want a bold, those sort of things. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at normal because it's all the same. So there are a few different ways to import this or get this onto your website. I'll show you a couple different versions and methods. The first one is to add something to your HTML. So I'm going to copy this, and then the instructions over here, it says we need to embed our collection into our web page. Copy this line of code as the first element in the head of your HTML document. So I'm going to come over and look at it in the Text Wrangler. And you can see up here I put a little notation as to where it needs to be placed. So I'm going to put it in here, and then I'm going to save it. What this is telling our web page is that as it starts to process all this information in the head, when it gets to this line, it's going to tell it where to find that typeface. Somewhere in Google's font API out in internet land, the Allegria Sans exists, and it's given an address where to find it, and then how to interpret it as a style sheet with CSS. So this just tells our typeface, or excuse me, our web page where to find the typeface, but it doesn't actually tell where to implement it. And for that, we need to go to the CSS and tell it specifically which selector we want to apply it to. In this case, I want all my type to be Allegria Sans, so I'm going to put it in the body selector. That's actually not what I want. We're going to go over here, and we need to copy this, to the CSS. So we're going to copy that line and go put this in the body. Now, it's worth noting that if you wanted your display type, your headers, to be a different typeface, you'd simply add that specific font family in here out of your collection. But you do need to apply it specifically to the various selectors that you want it to be applied to. So any of your tags, as we mentioned in class, are fair game, but you do need to apply it specifically in the CSS. So we've applied ours specifically to the body. That's good. We're going to save the file. Now we're going to come over here. You can see by default this isn't like just a regular serif typeface. Maybe it's Times. I'm going to refresh this, and you can see it switch over to Allegria Sans. Now I mentioned there was another way to do this, and this is valuable to know, not specifically in our case, but later in the semester when you're using a predefined theme or platform. A lot of times when you have access, when you're not paying for a website, let's say the free version of Cargo Collective, which we'll probably use, you don't have access to the HTML and you can't include this in it. So I'm going to show you what happens, or a way to get around that. We're going to click Save, and so that's no longer a part of our website. You can see when I clicked Refresh, it's still in a sans serif, but it's not Allegria anymore, and that is because in our CSS we told it if it can't find Allegria Sans, just to make it a generic sans serif. So what we need to do, we'll go back to our Google Fonts, and you can see there's some tabs here. These are different ways to add this code to your website. We're going to use the @import function for CSS. So what we're going to do is copy this and go to our CSS, and if we make this the very first line, it is essential that it is placed at the very top, and put this in there and save it. It's going to say at the import of the CSS we need to load this URL, and anything south of that that references Allegria Sans, it'll know where to find it. So we're going to click Save, come back over here. Now remember that we don't have that HTML header up there anymore. We're going to refresh it, and it's going to be handled specifically through our CSS. You can see that it's shifted back to Allegria, and it's all handled through that CSS. So they're both equally valuable. In our case, this might be a little quicker of a load time if you were to put the HTML reference up here, but it all works the same. So either one of those methods you want to employ is fine by me, and it's all going to result in the same implementation of your typeface. Hope that helps. Later.